says starting soon.
Right.
So, any questions before we get started?
No, I don't think so.
Full force into this unknown. It's probably more known.
Right. No. Yeah, no. I'll just go where you go.
All right. Then we will go live in 3, 2. All right. So I think we're live. Hopefully we're live. My name is David Petty. I am a pastor, and this is our first official podcast / live Twitch stream / video thing, hanging out, just getting together, talking about faith and gaming with CrossFire, faith and gaming. So I'm here with my friend Zach Bechtold. And Zach, I'll go ahead and, I guess I already said your name, but I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do.
Yeah, certainly. I am a pastor myself as well for the United Methodist Church up in northwestern, very rural Montana. Been up here, I don't know, about 1.5 years now. I've got 3 churches just out in small communities here. And in my free time when I'm not at the church and doing family things, play some video games with a community of folks and enjoy the heck out of it. So glad to be here to talk about all of this faith and gaming and everything in between.
Yeah. So I want to get started with some questions. I'll throw them out to you. Tell me a little bit about your background with video games. How old were you when you remember playing your first video game, and what was it?
Oh, geez. So the first video game I remember playing was on the original Nintendo, the NES system. It was, I couldn't have been 5 or 6. I was just little. I had older brothers, and so they got the Nintendo for Christmas, and my parents graciously bought me it was Mickey Mouse. Oh crap, I can't remember the full title, but it was a Mickey Mouse game, and it was just a platform jumper. You ran around, Mickey Mouse shot stars, and it was great. I played the heck out of that game.
Nice.
And of course, Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt and things like that. But that was the first game that I really remember playing, as silly as it is. It was fun.
Nice.
And progressed from there. I went from Nintendo right into Sega, and had a Sega Genesis, and played a lot of Golden Axe and Street Fighter and Sonic, of course. I ran through that whole series, and went back to the Nintendo with the N64 and on into Xbox, and have been an Xbox console person ever since.
Okay, so I was going to say that was my next question was, what are you on now? Are you playing PC? You playing Xbox?
Right.
It sounds like mostly you're playing an Xbox.
Mostly Xbox. I tried PC when I was in high school and just really couldn't get into the controls, couldn't get into the things, and Xbox came along and really just dug into that, and been a console guy ever since.
Yeah, I know for a lot of people it comes down to kind of what your friends are playing and what console has the games that you like. So tell me a little bit about do you mostly play single player games? Do you play multiplayer games? You're finding yourself in community or kind of on your own?
Yeah, no, it's all multiplayer games for me. Very rarely will I play by myself. I have found a community of guys, most of them located in Oklahoma, and a guy out in Tennessee. And then myself in Montana. We all play a little Xbox. We've gone through Destiny, play a lot of PUBG, and but just play things that are kind of mass multiplayer, just online, run and gun, just do those things. Yeah. And rarely will I hop on and just play something by myself for a long period of time. I'll get on every now and then and just play it, but it's really centered around that community and those guys.
Very nice. Yeah, so I think that kind of leads into my next question, which is that, I think for me, one of the reasons I started this group, this CrossFire Faith and Gaming, was recognizing that there are less and less opportunities, I think, that pop up organically for people to connect, and a lot of people are finding ways to connect in digital ways that we never really thought of before. Where maybe 50 years ago it was that you participated in a Wednesday night basketball league. Well, now it's a Wednesday night Night Overwatch League or,
Mm-hmm.
Destiny or something like that. So, so tell me a little bit more about how that community came to be for you. Like, how did you guys meet up, and how did it come to be? And then tell me a little bit about where that fills the need for community in your life from kind of a spiritual standpoint.
Yeah, no doubt. So I got hooked into this community. I have a podcast on my own. Shameless plug, you can take out whatever. Bearded
Oh,
Theologians.
please, yeah. I meant to officially ask you about that and
Right.
have you tell us about that. So we can get into that in a second.
Yeah,
But
we'll get into
yeah,
that
tell me
later.
about the community, and we'll talk about your Beardcast
Yeah.
in a second.
So my podcast partner and I, we that was one of the biggest ways that we connected. We've never lived in the same place, and had met via social media and some other church things that we were doing. And after we met face to face, we began playing Xbox together. And he brought me into this community of people who he had been playing with for a while, for a couple of years at that point, and had kind of met face to face because they were all in Oklahoma or in that area, and he had connected with through other mutual friends. And so we got together, and there were 4 or 5 of us that just got on and played regularly. And then our straggler from Tennessee randomly joined one of our PUBG matches one night, and we haven't been able to shake him since. He's been a great addition to our group, and it's been really interesting because all of us are either in our mid-30s, from our mid-30s to our mid-40s. I think everybody now has kids, and none of us see each other on a daily basis, but we know intimate details of each other's lives and have really meaningful conversations while we're playing games, which, I mean, it's hard to find that community anywhere you go anymore. And to have that really a tight knit group of guys, we have a text group on our phone that we text each other fairly constantly throughout the day, and laugh and joke around, and but also have really serious conversations. Me and my podcast partner are really the only religious folks in the group, and they have to hear us talk podcast topics and themes and things like that from time to time. And one of the guys, he not a church guy, admittedly not a church guy, but he heard us talking about the podcast one night, checked it out, and came back to us a couple days later and said, "Hey, I just got to tell you, I went and listened, and it made a difference. Just this relationship that we have here and what you guys said there really, got me thinking about some stuff, and how I treat other people and how I interact with people in the world, and what I can do to make it a better place." And it's just little things like that make a huge difference, not only in that little community of guys, but we all take aspects of it into the rest of our day-to-day lives. So it's really neat to see that happen.
Nice. So before we get a little bit more into your Beardcast, you said a couple of really important things that I wanted to touch on and ask you. So for you, you mentioned you guys all have kids in this community. So how is that, I think, both, connecting with other parents, right? And, maybe not necessarily always over parenting, but then also how do you find what are the tensions, and where have you found help in balancing gaming and family life, right? Being a family man, being a pastor, being a dad, and being a gamer, and being a guy that hangs out with other people.
Right. There's, no matter where we come from, what profession, what part of life, what part of the world we come from, there's this deep sense of, at the end of the day, when we turn the Xbox on and put the headphones on, we get to disconnect from real life for a minute. While we play games, and there's that sense of connection of, we can come in and process some of the parenting things that we have, process some of the real life things that we have, but we can also just simply talk about what's going on in the game, or just, movies or music or what's funny, just simply just disconnect and enjoy ourselves, and not have to be all business, not have to be anything but playing this game in this community. And I think for everybody that joins that group, or any community like this, or any community in general, that's what we're looking for, is a place to go and connect with people that get us, but also disconnect from the real world and just take a breath,
Sure.
and kind of release some stress, and enjoy the moment.
Yeah. Well, and I know, the work of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talking about flow. He did this work back in the 70s, talked a lot about the importance of kind of being in the zone, right? So whether it's flipping hamburgers, mowing lawns, taking out the trash, or if it's playing a game, playing a sport, maybe it's playing solitaire, right, with cards in person. Whatever it is, when you find yourself in those moments when you're in the zone,
Mm-hmm.
is the thing that brings you the most happiness. So I can definitely see what you're talking about, that, throw on the headphones, get into the zone, get into the
Mm-hmm.
game with this group of guys, and just have some moments of happiness where, especially in a daily life that's often
Mm-hmm.
interrupt driven. But tell me a little bit about, like, how do you balance that with your family in terms of, do you have a scheduled time that you meet every evening or every week, or because I've seen it happen with friends of mine where there's tension in the family if somebody just oh, my friends are on, I got to go,
Right.
and they jump on immediately, and there's this tension where suddenly they're physically in the room but emotionally unavailable. So
Right.
how have you have found ways to balance that, that are healthy, that are, what would you advise somebody else who's maybe in the same boat, who's struggling?
Yeah, no. So something that's fun in our group. We have a couple of business owners who are able to get on at like 2 p.m, and that throws a real fun temptation out there. Since my office is right across the street from my house, of, hey, I'm going to jump on for a little bit. Man, I could ditch work and go play with them. And so yeah, that tension's there. Or even on a day off, or 3 or 4 o'clock when the kids get home. You're right. There's that tension there. How do we do that, navigate that? And for me, and in my house, kids go to bed 7:30, 8 o'clock. Spend a little bit of time with my wife, but and then she uses that time as well to go and have some her time. The kids are down, the kids are quiet, I'm out of the way, she's out of the way, and she goes and reads a book, watches HGTV or something like that, and just enjoy some quiet. And I put headphones on and go. And within our group, that's really, really kind of, with the exception of some after dude every now and then, that's kind of the anticipation that everybody puts their kids to bed, and we kind of gather. And we're in a couple different time zones, so that makes it interesting. But there's that understanding of, hey, my kids are still up, got to hang out with them. Hey, wife and I are watching, Office for the millionth time, and we're going to spend that time together, and I'll be on later. But there really is just kind of that coming together about 8, 9 o'clock at night, that we know that community is going to be there. And so,
Well, I
yeah.
think that's, it's great that you guys have that understanding. I could see if you were playing with a bunch of people who didn't have families, or were, single individuals, you're like, I got to put the kids to bed, and maybe they don't understand, or maybe
Right.
they to them, that wouldn't be their priority. So,
Right.
so I think it's really important you found a community of kind of
Yeah.
similar life stage individuals,
Well,
so you've been able to do that.
right. And it's important on my family end too, that I've done this long enough. I've been involved in just the understanding that the video games are a stress relief for me, for, I don't know, the last 8, 9 years. And my wife has been intentional about, if I haven't played in a couple of days, or she can tell that things at work or in life have been stressful, maybe you need to go play some Xbox, maybe just go hang out in there for a little bit. And so she senses that too, of, this is a good thing. And we've had conversations about it, of me feeling bad of, man, I play, I want to come hang out with you and watch TV. And she's like, no. I understand that that's what we just have that understanding of this is the space we need at this time. And it's become part of our routine, and it works well.
Yeah, and I think there's also kind of a stigma, right? That there's this stigma around video games that, for a long time, and I see that might be changing with a new generation of people who are brought up with video games, compared to those who didn't get brought up with video games. Kind of the same thing with people who were brought up with television versus an older generation. Kind of the idea that all screens are a waste of time, are, being lazy, are, which some of it I think gets down to that, the ideal of American consumerism, that like that if you're not being productive, then you're not valuable as a human being.
Right.
So I think, some of it for me has been about rejecting that sense that our only value comes from productivity,
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that we have inherent value because we're people, regardless of whether we're being productive or not, and that that being productive is an ends to a means. And I think this would be kind of an Aristotle thing to say, which is that the instrumental means, right, which get to the intrinsic means of true happiness. So for me, I think the understanding that there's more value. I'm not remembering where I was going with this, but understanding that there's more value in a person's time than simply being productive, and pushing back a little bit on that stigma that's been there for games, where I've had to try and draw the line between, okay, like what's different between playing a Wednesday night basketball league and playing in a Wednesday night Overwatch league?
Right.
What's different between binge watching Netflix and playing Xbox for 10 hours?
Right.
What's different between reading a book and playing through a 4-hour Saga video game? Like I remember watching or playing through a game called Firewatch a little while back, and it's a 4-hour game. It's just a single story, and I thought, this is shorter than watching 2 Lord of the Rings movies. So trying to find that balance there and then communicate it, I think is important to make sure that we push back on that stigma that video games are not inherently evil, right?
Right. Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. I going to some of the meetings that you and I have to go to and check-ins, and people they like to ask, well, what are some of your spiritual disciplines, right? And for a long time I was like, well, I'm 12 and I play video games, right? Because it's that stigma of,
right.
Oh, no, understand that there's something more here. That when this is essentially the equivalent of the Wednesday night basketball game, or going to the bar, or going to the coffee shop. It's just going where there's people, right? And and you take a look at that and what you're doing in video games. You're engaging your mind, your motor skills, and this community. You're coming together with people and accomplishing something. And who can argue with that, right? You're right. We got to push back on that a little bit.
Oh, you're still there? Did I lose you? Zach? Uh-oh. I think we're having some technical difficulties.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Well, we broke up for a second.
Okay.
I think you're back.
Yeah, I feel like I'm back.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're all there?
I don't feel like I ever went away. But no, I just, the short of it, I agree. We got to push back on that because there is good there.
I just realized I had not put this out there to our CrossFire Facebook group, but let me do that real quick.
Yeah, go for it. Oh, you looked over here on the thing.
So tell me about one video game that has, for lack of a better word or term, like tell me about one video game that's changed your life. Maybe that sounds too big,
I really think it was Left 4 Dead 2. That's what really got me into playing games to play for a community.
Okay. Help me understand that a little bit. I haven't played the.
So I don't know. Left 4 Dead's killing zombies, pretty menial task. Run and gun. Go. You start the level, you go through, you hit a big boss, you're on to the next. Pretty simple stuff. Had some online multiplayer type things, but I was playing with. It was when I was a youth pastor, and the assistant pastor at the church I was at. He and I, we'd take our lunch break, go to the youth room, and play this game and just kind of decompress. Well, he moved, and we'd worked together, I don't know, 6 or 7 years at that time. And so we'd built a pretty big relationship, and we're mourning being apart. And we had played this game a ton and figured out, hey, we can play it online, and began to do that. And then I moved further away, and we kept that up and kept that up for a couple of years. And then I met my podcast partner, and we went that direction as well. And so I attribute a lot of it to Left 4 Dead, because otherwise I would have played single player games and just kind of done it for myself. But that was the game that introduced me into the community aspect and being online, and really pushed me in this direction.
Okay. And so what's a game? Well, actually, let's just pause there.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about, you said you're talking about your podcast partner. You mentioned earlier you've got a podcast. So shameless plug away. Tell me about your podcast. What is it? Tell the viewers what it is, why they should watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a podcast
inside your headphones.
Right. I do. So I don't know what side it's on. No, it's called Bearded Theologians, and my partner Matt Franks, who's a Methodist pastor as well in Oklahoma, we started it a little over almost 4 years ago now, and kind of as a joke, we'd been talking about it while playing video games, and been joking, and finally one night we broke down and bought the website and said we're going to do it. And what it came from is just having these types of conversations, exactly what we're doing today, and why is this stuff important, and how do we navigate life, how do we navigate spirituality and theology, and what we had found, because he and I had built this relationship on social media purely, and had only seen each other face to face a couple of times, and still only see each other face to face once or twice a year, if we're lucky. So we had found there's this tension with social media and digital media that you can't really build relationships that are life-giving, that are really meaningful, that are anything but surface level. And we thought, no, we're going to push back on that. Not only can you do that and can you build relationships, you can build community, and you can build safe space online that allows people to wrestle with their spirituality, lets them wander throughout what they believe, what they don't believe, and navigate that in a safe space, where online isn't always a safe space to wonder about that stuff. And so what we wanted to create was this community where people could come together, whether it was with us digitally, or have a resource that allowed for that space, so then they could take it back into their personal lives, whether that be into a physical community, just themselves individually, or whatever it looked like for them. And so we've worked the last 3, almost 4 years trying to create that space, and do a weekly podcast. Most of them are about 15 minutes, because we figure no matter where you live, whether it's rural Montana or Denver or Dallas or Chicago, wherever, you've got at least a 15-minute commute. And so we want to hit that, not give you a ton of information, but give you enough to go, I like that, or no, these guys are idiots. Yeah. But really just to kind of process
in the second. Yeah.
Right. And well, here's why I like this, or here's why I don't like this. Or take it into a small group, or your family, or your car ride, and let it be a conversation starter. And so we didn't want to give all the answers. We just wanted to give enough to get people thinking and get them started to have these conversations wherever they may be. And it's gone from there. And we try to host a weekly blog, or a blog space for people who don't want to maintain their own, because to maintain a blog space is really, really hard. And so for a while, for about a year, we curated a blog space, and we've kind of fallen away on that, because that's hard to do, even when you're not writing and you're just getting people to write. But that was valuable. And then we'll have guests and things on, and have conversations just like this. People who are doing really cool things in the world and writing books, and just get them to tell us exactly like this. What are you doing, and why do you do it?
So now, as a you've got this podcast. It's called Bearded Theologians, and it's beardedtheologians.com, right? Mm-hmm. People can go there and then just search for it in the podcast. So let me ask the obvious question here: do you have to have a beard to be on the Bearded Theologians podcast? Is this only a podcast for men or for women with beards, or have you had guests on that maybe don't have beards?
So that's always the running question, and it makes Matt and I laugh, because we've had more women on our show than we've had men, and so no beards are required. It's just simply for the hosts, and no, it's for everyone. like I said, we've had more women. I used to tell everyone that we would, because there's the video aspect of it, and I used to tell everyone we'd Photoshop a beard on you if you wanted, and my partner kept getting mad at me because we can't actually do that. He's like, quit telling people that.
Oh, man.
So no, it's fun, but we do get that question. Probably almost everyone that we interview that doesn't have a beard, they either try to grow one really quick, or ask if they have to have one.
Nice.
And we just
So,
laugh.
I want to jump back into a really important thing you just said there.
Yeah.
Talking about building community online, because that's some of the pushback I've heard in creating this, Crossfire, Faith in Gaming, online Facebook community is like, well, you can't have a real community online. It's just going to be a fan page, or how can you actually form real, deep human connection through an online medium? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I don't think we should be scared of this medium, right? And I think when we say, well, you just can't do it, relationships, community can't be built online, and it's a lie. I think it can be. I know it can be. I'm a part of it, and you're doing this, so I know you're familiar with it as well. My big pushback on that is, what do we have to lose if we try? Right? If we try to build these communities, if we try to do these things and it doesn't work, we're not out anything. They weren't there anyways. Everyone that said it couldn't be done was right, and we're not out anything other than maybe some time and effort. But if we try this and we build these communities and something good and life-giving comes from it, we have everything to gain from that. Just in the group of guys that I game with, my podcast partners, our whole relationship is this. And it has turned in from a digital relationship to our families have vacation together. We see each other. We are intentional about gathering together, and within those guys, we've talked about having new kids. We've got a guy who's going through a pretty nasty divorce, and gets on and needs that community to decompress with and to vent to, and to be a space where he doesn't have it in his regular life. And so you can't tell me that these relationships don't happen and they're not deep and they're only surface level, because that, if they were, that kind of stuff wouldn't happen. And knowing the guys that we play with, knowing that there's a couple of pastors in the room, they let us be us. And we let them be them. And the days they need a pastor, we get to be a pastor. The days we just need to bro out, we get to bro out, and so there's that understanding of we get to be us. And that's where that deep relationship comes from. And I face to face physical relationships sometimes that doesn't ever happen. It's always surface level.
Yeah, I've definitely had those relationships where you meet somebody and you develop an acquaintance level relationship with them, where I will definitely say hi to you and mention your first name when we run into each other at the grocery store.
Right.
I'm never going to come to you with my problems.
Right.
And maybe in some ways, I almost wonder, just throwing it out there, I almost wonder if there's a possibility for a deeper connection, because it's not somebody you're physically seeing in your day-to-day basis, because it's not somebody that you're working with or somebody that you're, going to school with, or somebody that you're in a physical community with, that in some ways you can actually open up, you can actually be more vulnerable. And then, I think just knowing what we know about science and psychology and, having gone through a hard thing with a community, if one person is willing to open up and be vulnerable, then, I think the whole community surrounding that then gets a deeper sense of bond, a deeper sense of connection, because they've gone through a hard thing together.
Right. No, that's absolutely right. I think there's less vulnerability on a digital connection, because you're right. There's not that, well, I'm going to see them in the grocery store next week and they're going to know, we don't worry about those things. We get to be us, and for better or for worse. And I think my biggest encouragement with all of this, playing around in the space, building community in this space, is what do we have to be afraid of? Why are we what are we waiting for? I guess it's silly to be scared of this, or just to constantly no, it can't be done because for whatever reason, because we really don't have anything to lose if we try. If we don't try, I think we have everything to lose. If we don't pursue community in this space, I think we have everything to lose. But if we try it and it doesn't work, okay, go back to the drawing board. Let's try a different avenue. At least we tried.
Absolutely. So let me ask you one last question here. Let me pull up my questions. One last question, and then I think I'm going to let you go, and we'll wrap this up. And so I guess my last question for you is, what is one spiritual practice that you have, outside of gaming? Because we've heard all this about how gaming is a spiritual practice for you. What's one spiritual practice outside of that maybe you would offer as a piece of advice to gamers out there that are looking for something beyond gaming? What's a spiritual practice you have that you would recommend to them?
Outside of gaming and the podcast, those are my top two. My very close third is being outside. I'm fortunate enough to get to live in part of the world where being outside, hiking, canoeing, just being outdoors is wonderful most of the year. But I've also lived in the desert and in New Mexico and Texas, and simply just finding places to go and hike, to be outside, to enjoy creation at its fullest is a huge spiritual practice for me. It's something I can take my whole family on. I can go by myself. My wife and I can go. It's just one of those things that's never ending in the possibilities of places to go, people to go with, and just be able to be out and about and enjoy creation. Yeah, that's a big one for me.
Well, and I know that just to follow up on that a little bit, I ran into an online gamer group that I'm a part of, and there was a guy on there that was talking about how he had recently played through a ton of games and was wondering what to play next, but really felt like he had gotten to a point where playing games had just lost the joy for him. And he was wondering like how to find the joy playing games again. And everybody's trying to offer the oh, you got to play this, you got to play this, you got to play this. And finally, like the piece of advice I gave him, and I think he took it, and it sounded like it worked out well, was try disconnecting, right? Like try taking some time away, and then when gaming calls you back, and when you feel like you've come back to that place where you need a connection, where you need the digital, where you need the virtual, the wonder and awe and the flow that comes with being a part of an online or a single player game, then come back to it. So it sounds like you're saying for you, it's kind of a both and with your podcast and gaming, but then also, getting outside, breathing fresh air, looking at the sun. I mean, don't look at the sun, but right, like seeing sunshine and just being in nature. It's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, it looks like I'm seeing over here that somebody's chatting that nobody can hear me. Luckily, hopefully, the whole thing has been recording on Zoom. And so then I can just take that Zoom recording and I'll just re-air it with the actual here, let me just chat over here. Let this person know. Good to know. Recording on Zoom, and we'll re-air the episode, hopefully with some audio. Well, it wouldn't be a first time without some hiccups.
That's
but
right.
If nothing else, maybe this is just our beta test of the first ever, and hopefully, if nothing else, you and I had a good chat.
Absolutely.
So Zach, thank you so much for being here, for being willing to be a guest in the first ever CrossFire Faith and Gaming podcast / live stream. And hopefully, let me, before I let you go, do you play any online games that are cross-platform? Because I don't own an Xbox, and you don't own a PC. Like, are you into the Fortnite craze? Is that?
I bought PUBG, and since I bought PUBG, I couldn't justify spending $30 and then playing Fortnite for free.
Right. Sure. Well, and PUBG is not cross-platform, because I think the level of gameplay there would be just completely unfair with, Yeah. So, all right. Well, hopefully you and I can find a time or a place or a game that we can play together. But for
Certainly.
now, I'll let you go and just say thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right. See ya.